here. I'm right here
But
back in South Africa. We
he's been
missed
showing
we
us
missed our
flames.
show last week.
Yeah, and you've just been
Mm.
showing us some nice pictures from Ireland and having a great time. So I'm like, back to studio. There's no time to play now. All right. Welcome back. I think let's get right into it, Dr.
Be
Manda.
there.
And if you don't know him, Dr. Manda is our resident leadership guru. Dr. Maanda Tshifularo is the founding director of Super Lead Advisory, and he specializes in strategy, in operations, and leadership development. He's a strategist, leadership coach, and an author of Lead with Super Clarity, a global recognized facilitator, and he has moderated high profile events. Dr. Manda, good afternoon. Welcome back. Let's start here.
Uh, yes.
Let's start here. So, over the past few weeks, Dr. Manda, we've had, such an enriching series focused on values-based leadership at an individual level. So, looking at things like, self-reflection, purpose, strength, and commitment. But today, we're turning a corner, I believe. And this new series shifts our focus from the individual to the team. Can you then walk us into this new conversation? And what are we focusing on? And maybe why does it matter so much?
Uh, Absolutely. So let's dive straight in. So, I mean, we had such an awesome set of conversations in the past couple of weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, personal leadership, sets a very very good foundation for leading anyone, leading a teams, leading organizations. But it really comes down to how this plays out in a team environment,
Mm.
and so that's why we want to kind of just now shift ever so slightly to say, how do you build and lead thriving teams? I must
Yep.
tell you, I have met way too many people that work for like incredible organizations, big brands. From the outside, and you're like, yo, I want to go work there. And
Uh-huh.
then when you sort of talk to them, sometimes you find they are miserable, they are not growing, there is some struggle of some sort. And largely because no matter how big an organization you work for, no matter how grand the reception area and all of that stuff, it comes down to what actually happens in your team environment, how
Yep.
you engage with your manager, how you engage with your colleagues. If this unit is not working well, we have a problem. And many forward thinking companies, instead of sort of fixating on the outside view of what this company looks like, they're
Mm-hmm.
now more focusing on how do we make teams themselves. There might even be thousands of teams. How do you make the teams themselves work better?
Okay.
Because that's where it matters. That's where innovation is. That's where people grow. That's where breakthrough solutions are designed, and that's where the organizational health stems from, if it were.
Mm.
Now, so that's sort of the why. Now, to go into the nitty gritties, you remember when we did the values based leadership, we kind of took a model and then we sort of ran with it for a couple of weeks. Now, for
Yep.
this time around, we are structuring this on a research that was done at Google, the company, right?
Okay.
So Google itself sort of went out and say, let's sort of do research and figure out, how do we make Google Teams work? And they actually named this Project Aristotle, based on the famous quote that of his that says, "The whole is greater than the sum of the parts." Now,
Mm.
I'm gonna share all of the sort of the five key areas to make the teams work in a moment. Um, I want to first just sort of say that this is not the only way to think about team effectiveness. There's many frameworks, but this one that we're kind of using for the next couple of weeks, it just aligns with so many frameworks, and it's a lot easier to work with.
Yep.
Now, question back to you, Luko. We want to
Okay.
think about what makes teams great and work. Before we share what we have to share, what are some of your thoughts? You may have been part of a team.
Mm-hmm.
What made that team, function and work? You may also have been part of teams that didn't work. Some initial thoughts, and this is
Yep.
to you and also to our listeners, just to kind of
Yeah.
bring our minds in to say, wait a minute, what actually makes a great team at church? What makes a great team in a company of the sort? What makes a great team
Mm.
in a public sector environment?
I think for me, what makes a great team is proper communication and making sure that everybody is able to work respectfully with everybody in the team, be it the manager working respectfully with the ones on the ground, which is obviously the rest of the team, or even the team being able to work in line and hand in hand with the manager with respect. So as
Love.
much as we've got all these different leadership roles, or different roles that we play in the team, as long
Yeah,
as we can respect each other and communicate effectively, we're
yeah,
able to know. I know where you're at as Dr. Manda, you know where I'm at. So we don't end up overlapping each other's business.
sure. Right. I think you must do this show.
Really? Now you give me too much credit.
No, 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 no. Spot on, spot on. So we're gonna use different words to sort of, express what you have expressed. Team at Google, they went out to find out what makes a Google team work, and they conducted over 200 plus interviews. They analyzed, check this, over 250 attributes of over 180 active Google teams. So,
Oh,
in short, they did a lot of number crunching and they did a lot of research. And the first thing they found out was that it's not so much who is in the team, but it's more sort of how do the team interact and
yes.
how is their work structures? How are people allowed to make their contribution? Essentially,
Mm.
summarizing what you said. But there were five main things that they just kind of to make it super clear that these things they make a team effective. And then
Okay.
I'm gonna ask a question just after this. So you stay with me.
I
The
must
first
psych
one is
myself for it.
the first one is if there is a psychological safety, if there
Mm.
is psychological safety in a team, and what they mean by that is if members of the team can feel like they can take risks, they can express who their ideas without the
Okay.
fear of being embarrassed or being ridiculed or worse in some instances. Number one is psychological safety. Number two, if there's a sense of dependability, can we count on each other to
Mm.
contribute our quality pieces of work on time as well? Right. So
Yeah.
dependability was the second one. The third one is if there is structure and clarity. Are
Mm.
roles clear? The plans clear? We know who is doing what, and everything is aligned, and
Yeah.
the team is structured. Number four is meaning of work, which is are we as a team working on something that is personally important to each of us? Meaning of work. The last one is impact of work. Do we fundamentally believe that the work we are doing matters?
Hey.
Now, those are the five: psychological safety, dependability, structure and clarity, meaning of work, and the impact of work. The first question is which of these things do you think the Google team found out to have the biggest impact of all the five? It's a guess, it's a guessing game.
Yeah, I think it's dependability.
Okay, fascinating. Um, the answer is they found out that psychological safety is
Oh.
by far the most important of the five dynamics.
I should have trusted my instinct.
So to be clear, all of them matter, but psychological safety
Was
was
at the
found
top.
to be the most important.
Interesting. All right. Now, you mentioned psychological safety, as the first factor, like we just spoke about it. It's a term that's become more common in leadership and organizations, or organizational circles, that is, but many still misunderstand it. Can you then unpack what psychological safety actually means and why it matters for the teams?
Absolutely. So psychological safety refers to this team climate where people feel safe to
Mm-hmm.
take interpersonal risk. Now, this is a specific type of risk, interpersonal risk. There's all sorts of risks out there to
You don't
look out
you
for.
don't take uncalculated risks on behalf of the team.
So this
Kushaya,
one in particular
kushaya.
is, do I feel safe to take interpersonal risk? By that we mean, do I feel like I can speak up?
Mhm.
I can offer a new idea. And here's the most important one: can I admit a mistake
Yep.
without the fear of embarrassment, punishment, or being seen as incompetent? And when we talk about safety, we're not referring to sort of physical safety. That's another
Yeah.
conversation. But this emotional and psychological security within a team context. Am I
Mm.
safe to say, guys, that was me? I did that.
Yeah.
And while the concept has been touched on as far back as 1960s by the likes of Edgar Sheen, it was Dr. Amy Edmondson, a Harvard professor, who sort of brought this more to the public and made it a lot more visible. She produced her work in the landmark study in 1998. Where she kind of say, hey, psychological safety is actually key to innovation and actually team performance. Then Google's Project Aristotle later sort of validated that, and that's why psychological safety has become such a buzzword. But in the problem with buzzwords also is they come through and they lose their context and the
Yeah.
nitty gritties of what actually is going on here.
True. Now, that's such an important distinction, I must say, because many leaders might assume that a quiet, compliant team is a well functioning one. But as you're saying, silence doesn't always mean safety. So, Dr.
No,
Manda, what are some of the signs that psychological safety might be missing rather in a team, even when everything looks okay on the surface? Because sometimes everything really does look all proper and hunky dory.
absolutely. And just because the team is quiet doesn't mean everything is okay. And I think we know this. If
Hmm.
just because there's silence at home, that also doesn't mean that everything is okay. And in
Have you
fact, prolong.
have you ever heard that? Sorry, Dr. Man, have you ever heard that thing on Facebook? They say, you must keep quiet and move in silent, to make big moves. And then some say, sometimes you're quiet and you're not producing a thing. What's the vibe? Sometimes we need you to speak because even after your silence, we see nothing.
So the silence doesn't mean you're producing.
Doesn't mean you're producing. Sometimes it means you know nothing sometimes.
So in this case, silence doesn't mean that the team is fine, doesn't mean that it's secure. And this prolonged silence sometimes might kind of talk to fear and that the environment is unsafe. Now,
Hmm.
we can actually even play to. So there's one can also, as whoever is listening to us, can take note and ask these questions to their team. Right, about seven of them. Um, yeah, I was gonna ask you to say yes or no to these things, but I don't know. So just answer inside, right?
Okay.
So there's some questions that you one can do very quickly to sort of check: do I have a is the team environment psychologically safe? Like, if
Hmm.
the first question is, if you make a mistake on this team, it is not held against you. Right.
Sure.
Could you say yes or no? Don't answer.
Okay.
Number two, members of this team are able to bring up problems and tough issues with ease. Yes or no, and to what degree, right? People
Mm.
on this team sometimes accept offers of being different. They kind of say, hey, I have a different view. I often say in my classes when I teach that those are some of my favorite words when one of the students says, I have a different view.
Oh.
So that we're not sort of all doing groupthink. It's safe to take a risk on this team, if yes or no. No one on this team will deliberately act in a way that undermines my efforts.
Yeah.
Working with the members of my team, my unique skills and talents are valued and are utilized. And if you have got way more answers that are on the negative across this number of questions, there is a good chance that maybe we do need to revisit how the environment is.
Maybe we
And
need to change your
briefly
team.
on this one. Sometimes uh, the psychological safety kind of you lose it over time as the
Mm.
stress and the pressure and the targets and all of that stuff starts to kind of build up. You may have, 2019, you probably knew that your team was, together. There was psychological safety. You were innovating. There was robust conversation. People were free to admit mistakes. And then over time, with more tighter controls, with more processes, you might find that maybe we are no longer as psychologically safe as
Yeah.
yeah.
True. Now, that really puts things into perspective. So then, if psychological safety is so foundational to how teams perform, Dr. Manda, what can leaders then do to start creating that kind of environment where people actually feel safe to speak up?
Right. So Amy Edmondson has got a beautiful framework, which I think it's so easy to work with.
Okay.
So the first thing she sort of say, hey, as a leader, so one maybe is to do that initial assessment to sort of figure out where are we at,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're in a worse position, maybe you do need to act faster than the rest of the other teams. But there's sort of these sort of three steps or layers. Yeah, three steps maybe one can think about as a leader. Number one, she talks about what they call setting the stage. Number two is inviting participation. Number three is responding productively. So I'll just kind of touch on these things one at a time. On the setting the stage, she sort of recommends that when the work begins, and as a leader, you want to frame the work in such a way that you set expectations about failing, uncertainty, sometimes some things that we are not too clear about, and that you expect everyone to sort of share their ideas, and they're not going to be criminalized for them unless if it's a criminal activity. But it's important to at the beginning to sort of say, hey, we're embarking on a big project.
Yeah.
I do know that we're going to fail a number of times, and I know that not everything is clear. We There are so many things we don't know. So if anything comes up, if you make a mistake, be the first one to come sort of talk to us. So
Mm.
that helps to just kind of frame the environment in that, you know what, in this team, failure is expected because failure, is a constant journey, man. It's
Yep.
gonna be with us if you're gonna do something meaningful. Some things are gonna go wrong, mistakes are gonna be made, but
Yeah.
it's important that we sort of frame that. Very quickly, I'll go to the second one. The second one is about inviting participation. Now, as a leader, the role there is to kind of ask the questions that help people sort of, share their mistakes, their unfully formed ideas, is to sort of say, hey, is to listen intently as well, demonstrate your own humility, be the first one to say, I don't know this. Does anyone have an idea? I made this mistake. Can someone help me fix it? So by doing that, you're sort of saying, I'm human too. You're
Yeah.
vulnerable as well. The third one is um, respond productively. So when someone is raising like a random idea
Mm-hmm.
or a mistake or something like that, you want to kind of respond with curiosity rather than with criticism.
Yeah.
You want to sort of acknowledge the different idea, the mistake, but more productively. So to summarize, you frame the work to always expect that things mistake will happen. Number
Yeah.
two, invite participation. Number three, when they do share, respond productively.
Wow. Now, you've spoken about the psychological safety, which doesn't mean being comfortable. You said it means having the courage to speak up, challenge ideas, and learn together. But in many teams, especially high pressure environments, silence can be a norm actually. And people hold back even when they have a valuable input that is. So, how can leaders then begin to shift that culture and encourage a more open, an honest contribution?
The simplest way, it starts with the leader.
Mm.
um,
Yo.
to be able to sort of share when and then express. that I'm wrong now, or I was
Mm.
wrong, and a whole range of we're not advocating for leaders to be incompetent so that they can always kind of say I'm wrong, I did that badly, but all of us do make mistakes, right? So
True.
that's very, very, very key.
Yeah.
It's more important, I think, how you role model this by far than sort of follow the steps.
Mm.
um most people will sort of say, hey, does anyone have any questions? You may want to fix some of the language to say, are we missing something here?
Wow.
um you know I think I'm wrong. So some teams, they do what they
Wow.
call a pre-mortem. So
Oh.
so for instance, the campaign you had a conversation about right now, let's assume that's a project. So a
Okay.
pre-mortem says a meeting before that project, which is called everybody and say, right, assume everything goes wrong. What will we have done wrong? What will we have missed in our planning? And that sort of says we don't have it all. Yes, we have got a project, but there
Mm.
might still be something missing. At a culture level, the team at Google, I think since 2016, they have sort of this. I think it's a quarterly kind of conference, if it were, or a big thing where they come and present all their failed ideas, and they celebrate failure, and they draw learnings out of that. So
Oh.
imagine you're leading a church and you have a conference on all our failed ideas and projects, and that allows you to. One lady was saying this, that she also makes a funeral for her failed mini projects and ideas, and to
Oh, wow.
institutionalize this. But all the nuances, they differ by company and by people, and some are more expressive, some are not. But the core is this: we are human. We
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
mistakes. If we
True.
create an environment and that acknowledges that
Mm.
we can make a mistake, we can be wrong. We can start and launch a project, a youth project that doesn't work, and all of these things. It just creates room for everyone to show up authentically,
Yeah.
and knowing that they don't have to be perfect. Perfect,
Wow.
no matter who says what, does not exist. We are in the team context. We are
Yeah.
all human with different strengths and weaknesses, and the more we can bring all of this to bear, the better the teams are likely going to be.
Interesting. Now, we've touched on a lot today, Dr. Manda, from understanding what psychological safety really means to how leaders can actually begin creating a culture where it's lived out. But it's not
Yeah.
an overnight shift. So, what
Yes.
advice would you give to leaders who are trying to build this into their teams but aren't sure where to actually start?
Very simple and very quickly. The encouragement is to start small.
Hmm.
You don't have to now have a conference tomorrow. It's a build up this thing.
Yeah.
Invite feedback as quickly as possible so there's increased awareness. Model vulnerability. And sort of as people, and thank people for speaking up, for bringing an
Yeah.
idea that's ridiculous, for acknowledging that they made a small mistake last week. Demonstrate and that you appreciate that and celebrate that. So start small, invite feedback, model vulnerability, and thank people when they speak up and when they contribute, even in ways that are unique.
Wow. Sure. Dr. Amanda, this was a fitting way to actually kick off a new series on building teams that thrive. And, for those who are listening and want to take practical next steps, whether for themselves or for their teams, how can they actually engage further with Super Lead? And can you give us a quick preview of what's coming up in the next, or the rest of the series, that is?
Absolutely. So I'll start with the last question. So we kind of said, hey, there's these 5 elements that make a fantastic team, and then according to research, psychological safety came up as the most important. And then next week, we're gonna talk about the one that you pick.
You want me to bring you in
Next
tomorrow?
week, we're gonna Next week, we're going to talk about the one that you picked as the most important. So, next week, Monday, is International Lukho's Pick Day. So, we're going to
Uh-huh.
do that. So people can we work with teams, help them thrive, and we facilitate those kind of conversations and help teams do better, and just improve and see the benefits thereof. People can reach out to us. We've got a WhatsApp number 0780200051, or email us at mandat@superlead.co.za. That Manda has got two A's in between.
Yes,
Manda
please.
T.
Dr. Milo, thank you so much. Thank you for coming through. Let's meet up next week on International Lukho's Day. Have a
We'll
great
see
one then.
you on International Loco Day. Have a good one.
You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witness.